running all 6 just in and of themselves was like a big goal for us. It was a big thing of purpose. It was honestly, for me, it was the thing I carried a lot of like grief and memory for my dad in over the last couple of years. And heading into this year, we just had to finish Tokyo and London.
Hello everyone, this is Sam Breiter and I'm the founder of Run Breiter, a digital running community meant to educate, motivate, and entertain beginner runners and runners who struggle with consistency, see all the mental and physical benefits running provides. I've been coaching runners both in person and digitally for 5 years, but have been running both competitively and casually for 14 years. The Run Breiter podcast gives me the opportunity to bring on guests to share their running journeys and running advice. I assure you, listening to this podcast will make you want to run and follow your journey, as the conversations in this episode will send signals to your mind that even when it's cold, you're sore, tired, or going through something, that a run is still well worth doing. All right. Well, welcome to another episode in the Run Breiter podcast. This is episode number 44, and today we have on Rob Dalto, also known as Pursuit of Performance. You may have seen him on TikTok or Instagram. He has a lot of amazing content. And Rob, what I really love about your story, you're doing 6 world major marathons in a single year, man. I don't know many people who are doing that, and I've just been inspired by your running in general over the last year that I've connected with you. So wanted to have you on, and I'm so glad we're doing this episode in person here today. So would love for you to go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell me a little bit about like who you are, what got you into running, and we'll kick things off.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, I started running back in high school. I was a big baseball player and joined the cross country team and really ended up liking the folks and just kind of got stuck in. I wasn't very good, but loved the team and the people, and I ended up quitting baseball and running all the time. Did track in college. Funny thing is, I wasn't very good. I'm actually way better now than I was back in high school or college. But yeah, that was started my running journey. I always enjoyed endurance sports. I always loved that you could set a goal that's something you know you can't do today, but if you do these things, you can somehow achieve that. And then seeing that unfold physically has always been something that gave me a lot of energy.
That's great. And I know you said you weren't that good in high school, but obviously you were able to run in college. So tell me about that. Where did you run in college?
So I went to Gettysburg. I was actually a sprinter in college, and my best event was pole vault. So just imagine me with about 20 more pounds of muscle on, a pretty big meathead, believe it or not, and then got back into the endurance stuff thereafter.
What made you switch from pole vault back into endurance work?
Well, you can't really do pole vault after college unless you've got the utensils, which most people don't. And I was frequently injured. And so if I couldn't run, I'd be on a bike. And then there were times where I couldn't bike, so I'd get in the pool. And so I was like, okay, I should probably do a triathlon. Mm-hmm. And so I actually, after college, started doing sprint triathlons, and I did my first Olympic triathlon.
Oh, wow.
And then I signed up and did an Ironman.
Damn.
And that was actually the first marathon I ever ran.
That's crazy. How long ago was this, by the way, for context, for anyone listening?
10 years ago, 2013, I ran the Ironman. Yeah.
Wow. And so obviously, going into from pole vault to running, biking, and swimming, like how was that transition and adjustment for you? Obviously, you had good fitness built up to be a competitive athlete in college, but you know, what was that, I guess, learning curve for you or adjustment period? How did that look? It
was pretty easy and fun. I actually liked that triathlon's like a very dialed in sport. Mm-hmm. So you're thinking about how can I optimize the bike. My best event in the triathlon is actually the transition zone.
Okay.
Super optimized in the transition zone. So yeah.
Gotcha. And I mean, for someone who might be like a beginner right now, right? And maybe they have competed competitively with running or other sports. I mean, for you, obviously, like taking that leap from pole vaulting in college to a sport that really requires a lot of different skills. You got to be really versatile, build up a lot of endurance. It's a lot of training and time. Like, what advice would you have for someone who's trying to get into something like that?
2 things. Probably find something that inspires you. So I had no interest in running a marathon until I went over to Central Park on November 4th, probably, one year, and I saw people running the New York City Marathon, and I was like, wow, like that is inspiring. And so that was the first thing that gave me juice. And I find with like a lot of folks who are starting out, you kind of have to be motivated by something. It might be to do a 5K, it might be to do a half marathon, it could be anything. It could be a goal unrelated to running, where running is just the vehicle or the mechanism by which you achieve that other goal, health, mental clarity, whatever it might be. But finding something that like gives you that inspiration to do it is important. And then 2, it takes time. Like like I said, I'm better now than I was many years ago. It took me, a lot of my friends are like, oh, Rob's fast. It took me 13 marathons before I qualified for Boston.
Wow.
It's a grind out there. So, be graceful in it. Recognize that it's a slow build. Be kind to your body. And I don't want to say be patient, but just understand that, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah, and I mean, I think definitely, I know you said don't be patient, but I think patience is so important, whether it's the training we're doing or the goals that we have. It's not easy to get out there and run 26 miles or add in biking and swimming and all these different activities that you did. So, I mean, kudos to you. You've achieved a lot. I know you said find your inspiration, right? What specifically for you has inspired you to really climb all these different mountains and reach all these different milestones through fitness?
So in 2017, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. Over the previous couple of years, running became a way that my family really bonded. My sister picked up running. We would do races together. My dad loved coming to watch us race. And so when he got diagnosed, me and my sister were like, hey, let's do all the world majors together, in honor of Dad, have him along for the journey as long as he was around with us. We knew when he got diagnosed, he had stage 4 cancer, so we knew it was, time limited.
Sorry about that, by the way.
Thank you.
Of course.
So it just kind of gave us a bit of a purpose. Mm-hmm. And so at the time, we ran New York City together in 2015. And so we had one under our belt. We had just also did Chicago in 2017. So we had a little bit of a start. And then our third one was Berlin in 2019. My dad didn't make it there, but it was that was our purpose. And so running all 6 just in and of themselves was a big goal for us. It was a big thing of purpose. It was honestly, for me, it was the thing I carried a lot of grief and memory for my dad in over the last couple of years. And heading into this year, we just had to finish Tokyo and London. My sister had a spot to Tokyo from 2020, which got deferred, of course. So I did lottery charities for Tokyo and for London. She did it. We both did Cancer Society for London to finish that journey together. So we're like, all right, enough's enough. It's time to close this chapter. As much as we've loved it. And so we did both those races together this year. And then the whole 6 thing just came about because in the process, I qualified for Boston. I feel like you can't qualify for Boston and not run it. So there's 3. I did 9+1 last year with all my friends. So I got in for New York. All my friends wanted to run Chicago this year. So I'm like, all right, I'll run with you. A lot of them wanted to crack 3 for the first time. I said, hey, I'd love to be a part of that with you guys. So that was 5. And then I was like, hey, if I'm doing 5, I might as well do all 6. That would kind of be a cool journey. And then that just kind of started everything that's been going on the last couple months.
That's amazing. And first of all, thank you for sharing the story about your dad. I'm so sorry. Cancer is such a terrible thing. And I know so many people have been affected, but I think he would be so proud of you as far as what you have achieved. And, I really think what you're doing is amazing. It's rare, but it really just shows your passion. And hopefully some people who are listening right now, it motivates you to do something as well that's hard and different and challenging and that allows you to explore and really do something for a purpose. So again, thank you for that. Something I'd be curious about though, Rob, all these races you've done, I think I saw on your Instagram you've done over 20 marathons. By the end of this year, it's going to be way more than that, right, with all the majors that are coming up. And I know we were talking about it before the podcast that you are dealing with a little bit of an injury right now, but in general, you've done so many, so you've obviously done a really good job of staying healthy and taking care of the body. I'd love for you to share for people who might be dealing with a lot of early on soreness with beginner running, what they can do to stay healthy and have a long life with running like you have.
Yeah. The first thing I'll say is it's really hard. Most people who will get into running or really fitness in any capacity, once you're into it, your eyes are set on it, you've got a goal, and I firstly recognize how hard it is to deal with any injury. It's not easy. It's not easy to take time off. But one thing I found particularly this year is you can give 100% at everything, even if it isn't the act you want to be performing. So sometimes I'll say, I'm going to hammer my rest today. Like, I'm going to rest the heck out of my body today. I'm going to give that 100%, or I'm going to hammer my physical therapy today. And just get really dialed into the things that you can do that are going to help you out in the long term. As much as I'd want to be running, I can't do that. So I'm going to give 100% into whatever I can do that's going to support me getting there faster. And it still lets me have that attitude of like, I'm giving something 100%. You know, it's not what I want it to be, but there's definitely a lot of years where it's like, I'm not running, I'm not doing anything, I'm useless, I'm giving nothing, I'm giving 0%. But you can actually still give a lot of effort into, you know, whatever it is that can support you to get back.
Yeah, no, I love that. And something I noticed too about your profile, you said you have in your description, fueled by my own nutrition. That was something I was always curious about. What do you mean by that? Are you, like do you mind touching on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is more recently, like probably over the last year. And I've always been like relatively healthy, eaten relatively cleanly, but I've gotten really dialed into nutrition, and particularly over the last like nine months, where I was really ramping up my training and mileage and kind of getting to like a whole different level than I'd been at previously. When I looked at things that were on the market from like a nutrition and fueling perspective, I realized either like a lot of them I either just don't like, or I like them but they're really expensive. Things like Morton gels. Like I love Morton gels, but they're like $4 a packet, and
It costs a lot for sure.
and like you're out running, like we sweat a lot. We need electrolytes, right? We need all these things to like keep us fueled and hydrated and performing at our best. And I also started looking at a lot of labels, and I realized, hey, you know, there's a lot of things out there that, you know, actually maybe I enjoy, but is it optimized for me? Does it have all the things I want in it and nothing else? And so I started experimenting with making my own energy gels and also electrolyte formulas.
Oh, really?
And I've done both traditional gels with different blends of the base sugars that can go into them, and I've also made hydrogels, which is more like the Morton, where you're essentially encapsulating the sugar so you can eat it and it doesn't kind of sit in your mouth like really in a sticky way. You don't really need to wash it down with water. And so I've had a lot of fun doing that. And so actually for all the races I've run this year, to really put that stuff to the test, I've only had my own nutrition. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've like grabbed a water cup or like a cup of Gatorade at a water stop,
Yeah,
but
sure.
all my own gels, all my own electrolytes, just to really put it to the test.
And how has that worked for you? It's been pretty good, clearly.
Yeah, it's great. It's fun. I'll tell you what, the first time you do that, it's a little nerve-wracking because essentially like you're taking powders that you're taking out of a bag and you're mixing them together and you're like, is this...
You're like a scientist.
Yeah, it feels like Breaking Bad. Like my apartment looks like an episode of Breaking Bad.
So
like
funny.
Who knows what I'm cooking up in there. But then I also realized like that is exactly what's happening in a lab somewhere. Like, and I'm just doing this with 3 ingredients. Like I'm actually keeping this super simple, super clean, super healthy. It doesn't have a bunch of other additives in it. And so to get over that, I was like, let me go test these out. Like, let me go hammer these things. Like, I'm going to do these on like my hardest tempo runs. I want to have these in the environment where I will know if they don't work, that they will fail. Yeah. So, you know, I don't want to just have it when I'm going for an easy run. I want to put it to like the ultimate test. Like when my body is really struggling, like, can it take this and handle it well? And yeah, it's been great.
And so do you sell these, or is this just for your own personal use?
It's been for my own personal use. I've like offered to friends if they wanted to try them. I'd be interested to do something at a little bit larger scale, but haven't quite gotten there yet. The electrolytes are a little bit easier, a little more accessible. Because also at the end of the day, like you should be racing with what you train with, and you should be training with things consistently. Like a lot of the products that are on the market, ideally you should be having them with most of your workouts, especially if you're training for a marathon. If you're training for something shorter, you're doing workouts that are, 45 minutes or less, you probably don't need to get into the gels. You probably want some electrolytes just part of your daily regimen. But if you're upper in the distance, you should be having this stuff pretty regularly. And if it's cost prohibitive, it's tough to do that. So yeah, it's nice to have stuff to dabble with, and maybe down the road do something at larger scale.
Yeah, keep us posted if you do, because it sounds like something that is simple, and if it's affordable, why not? But I mean, I couldn't agree more. And like, there's so many people that I know who are beginner runners who will train for a race, they'll not use any sort of supplementation, and then they'll show up to race day and there's gummies and gels and electrolytes at all these stations, and they start chugging that, and then they cramp up. But I'm sure you could agree that's not a strategy where you're going to see success on race day, right?
Yeah, the mantra as old as time is you want to do nothing new on race day, right? You want to make sure you've worn those socks, you've had that fueling strategy and all those things, and that's certainly true. We've all been in desperate moments in a marathon where maybe we've run out of fuel and you can't help but to take something down because you got a cramp. But hey, those are lessons learned. But yeah, no, your point is spot on.
For sure. Something I'd be curious about too, because obviously for you have a huge achievement of qualifying for Boston. Obviously ran Boston, and I'd be really curious with a build like that, what did your training look like then compared to maybe now, where you're now just trying to like hang in there, right, and just be able to run all these 6 world major marathons in 1 year? I know that might be a long-winded question, but I'd be really curious.
I'll probably give you a even more long-winded answer, which is I've kind of view my marathon journey of doing 20 marathons in kind of 3 phases. When the first marathon I ran, well, Ironman aside, the first marathon I ran was Paris in 2015. I was living in London. I was over there on a work visa, and I used marathons as a way to kind of see cities. So I did a bunch of European marathons on weekends where my friends didn't want to travel. I'd go run whatever time. I didn't even care. I'd go out the night before, wine and dine myself, and then just go out and explore the cities.
That's awesome.
And it was very much just kind of learning the process of the marathon. I did go into my first one a little over my skis. I was like, I'm going to go run 3:30. I was thinking I was going to run all fast and stuff. And I was stopped on the side of the road with cramps at mile 16, and I missed that by nearly an hour. So I wasn't even close. So we have tons of learning lessons all along the way.
We've all been there.
Right? Like we've all been there. And so I had this phase of just like learning the marathon. And then when I started this journey of wanting to complete the world majors with my sister, I wanted that part of that journey for me to get into Boston. And the first time I really ran fast, my 9th marathon, I think, I ran 3:35. Wow. And something about it, I was like, you know what? I feel it in this body now. I think I can actually run 3 hours. I really think I could do it if I do all the right things and all the right training. That was Hartford 2018. And I set my mind to it. I ran 2,000 miles the following year.
Wow.
Ran 3:11 in Berlin, and then in the Philly Marathon, ran like 2:59:40. Just like sprinting down the line to get the BQ. And like I was like, I'm gonna be on 15 seconds on either side of 3 hours, but fortunately I was on the right side of it. And
That's
so
great.
I had this big phase of wanting to be really fast and hit that milestone. I mean, for those who are interested in it, it's a huge achievement in like the running community. It's not for everybody. If it's not for anybody, that's great. That doesn't matter. But once I've gotten through that, and I've done Boston twice now, like this year the vibes totally changed. Like going into this year, like I've achieved the fast goals that I have, and really just getting into this sequence of running all 6, it's been all about community for me. Like when I got to Tokyo, I met Tyler Schwartz.
Yep.
And I went to his endorphins run, and it was the first time that I'd really gone to like a shakeout run and like leaned into these races. For years I trained by myself or like went to races and just kind of like did my own thing. In the last year and a half I trained with a group, and we did Berlin together last year. But this is the first time I kind of got out of my own comfort zone or my own bubble. And it just like completely opened my eyes that there are just incredible people doing incredible things like all around us. And like seemingly ordinary people are doing absolutely extraordinary things. And just getting out there and talking and meeting new people, it just like blew me away. Like in my mind, I'm like, yeah, it's kind of cool. I'm doing something cool this year. I'm going to run all 6. There's probably like 20 of us doing it. And I was just talking to people who were so casual, like, oh yeah, I do like 100-mile ultras, or, I do this crazy thing. I climb mountains, just like mind-blowing things that are just absolutely extraordinary. And it really just inspired me to like want to get to know people more, want to understand people's stories. And in sharing my story, and like in particularly my journey, kind of in honor of my dad, I've just heard from so many people with like crazy stories, really emotional stories, that have been like really emotional, but also been like incredibly fulfilling. So this has been like a completely different year from anything that I've ever experienced.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I mean, I think that's one of the best parts about living in New York City, and one of the best parts in general about running is the fact that like we have that opportunity to connect within the community and find people that are like-minded. And obviously we've all gone through different things, we all have different running journeys, right? But at the same time, there's so many people that we have things that we want to learn about more and get connected with and become friends and do things with, whether that's races or hang out, whatever it might be. So I'm so glad you've gotten that community feel, and I've really seen that with your content. I've loved some of the videos that you've posted where you're running a race and you're just talking to people in the crowd. That's so cool that you're doing that. So I'd be curious, someone who might be a little bit more new to running, but they really want to get into that community side because they really enjoy meeting people and building these relationships. But because they're a little less experienced with running, they might be a little bit more shy about some of those interactions. What advice would you have for someone to really find a community within the sport that both you and I love?
Yeah. The first thing I'll recognize is it is really hard to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
Really hard and really scary. And I'm a decently outgoing guy, and I've been running for a very long time and decent at it. And it's still scary to show up to a run club. I was still just telling the story. I was out in San Francisco a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to meet up with a couple people that were at this run club. And I was gonna know a couple people there. And showing up there, I was riding the bike there. I was I'm so scared to just go talk to people, even though I know who's gonna be there, and I'm outgoing, and I know I can keep up. But it's just it's tough. It's tough to put yourself out there, and so even people who are out there putting themselves out there still deal with some of those anxieties. But so I just give yourself grace and recognize that what you're doing is hard, and give yourself a pat on the back. I don't know if it's the communities that I've been more involved with this year or if it's just something that's going on more broadly, but I do love that there's been a real lean in towards inclusion this year in the running community, at least what I've seen in New York and some other cities, where there's just so welcoming, really inclusive, welcoming of all paces, go out of their way to introduce themselves to new people and make them feel welcome. So I think now is a better time than any to get into a running scene or try different run clubs or just get out there and meet new people. I think it's really a special time. But yeah, whatever you put out there, you're gonna get back. That's the one thing I realized. In some of these races, you can woo and give a little bit to the crowd. Whatever you give them, they're gonna give back to you. And I found the same thing is true with telling stories. And I posted one very vulnerable post after I completed London and our 6-star journey, just kind of chronicling what that whole thing meant, to me, and kind of wrapping up that whole chapter. And the messages and the people that reached out to me just blew me away. It was wild. So yeah, whether it's meeting new people, wanting to get meet people in a deep way, or learn people's stories, or if you have a story and you want to get it out there, or just enjoying an environment that you're in. If you're doing a race, whatever you put out there, you're gonna get it back. So lean into the hard things.
For sure. Yeah, I absolutely love that, man. And I couldn't agree more. It's definitely, when you were being vulnerable here and you're saying sometimes I go to a new running club, and even though I know a couple people, where some people go to one of these and they don't know anyone,
So
it can
hard.
be nerve-wracking.
Oh, it is nerve-wracking.
And you're a super social guy, man. Everyone I've seen you talk to, you're super friendly. You seem confident, at least on the outside. The inside, sometimes, you don't know how people are feeling. But I think it's important for people to understand that it's not easy. Be patient, again, and, give yourself some time. Give yourself some credit for doing that. And over time, you build these great relationships that you obviously have built. I've built a few myself. And I think it's a really cool thing. Where would you say someone should start, though, when they want to find one of these clubs? Obviously, in New York, compared to other places around the country, it's going to be a different experience. If someone's, looking to join one, how would they go about finding the right one for them? Do you have any advice on that?
I mean, it depends on what what your objective is, right? If your goal is to meet people versus, if your goal is to, train with people for a race versus running specific paces, people are always going to have different reasons for wanting to join a run club. So I'd say first thing, figure out what your reason is for wanting to join a run club, and that's going to help you, when you look at what's available, okay, this is a better fit because it seems to align to what my interests are, what I'm trying to get out of the run club. So I'd say just categorically like have that in the back of your mind, and then just search. Like, I mean, if you're watching this, you're already a step there, because this whole universe is connected across run clubs. So it'd be pretty easy to find like what the different run clubs are that are out there. A lot of them do have socials like posted now, and like their own Instagrams, their own, probably more Instagrams than TikTok, but you can kind of get well connected to people who are bouncing between them in TikTok. So yeah, I'd say just figure out what you want out of it, and then if you search around, I mean, a Google search and an Instagram search, you're probably going to find what's available in your area, and then reach out to somebody that is in the run club and like make a friendly face. It's going to make it so much easier to go approach them. Like, it's really hard to show up cold to that group and be like, hi, I'm Rob. I know nobody. But like, if you can like connect with somebody beforehand that knows you're coming and is going to, when you show up, like you wave to them and they're like, oh, hey, Sam, good to see you. Thank you for coming. Like, that's just going to make it so much easier to like just break into that little bubble. Yeah, for sure. That's definitely want to do that. I mean, you could, of course, not do that, but I find for me, even like, it just makes it a little easier to like approach a big group of people standing around if you know you've got somebody you could go talk to kind of broker introductions as well.
Yeah, I really like that. Like, that's something I haven't even thought of. Like, the concept of meeting someone online who knows you're going to go and who is going to open you to the group and know that you might be a little new, but say like, hey, this guy's coming, I'm here to endorse him, like, meet this person. It's a lot better way to probably do it, so that's really good advice.
And don't be afraid to reach out to anybody. Like, run clubs are inherently social. That's why they exist. They're there for the social component, and everyone wants their run club to grow. If they didn't want it to grow, they wouldn't talk about it, right? they'd be hiding it. You wouldn't hear about it.
It'd be a private club.
So if anytime anybody reaches out to me, I'm grateful first that they think I've got something I can offer them that's helpful. So like, just reach out to somebody. They're going to be very grateful, they're going to be very helpful, they're going to be very welcoming, no matter who it is, guaranteed.
That's great.
And if they're not, I don't know, report back to me and I'll go find them.
Yeah, there's always more people out there. If someone doesn't answer, there's always someone else, right?
Yeah.
There's so many great people in the running community. But I know you were talking about the fact that obviously a great way that you've been able to meet people within the running community is the fact that obviously you have a social media presence, which has been so much fun to watch, man. Seriously, like, your content is great. Everyone needs to follow him, by the way, Pursuit of Performance. I was curious, though, why the name Pursuit of Performance? What made you passionate about going with that name?
I mean, kind of like just on my marathon journey, like, I feel like I've just been chasing a better version of myself in really all facets over the last couple of years, whether it's like my running or overall health or just anything I'm doing. I just feel like in a lot of ways I'm in pursuit of kind of like that next level of performance. Mm-hmm. And so like when I created that handle, it was really around like being the best version of myself physically, and then the best version of myself from an overall health perspective, and like thinking about my own nutrition and building some of those things. Those are all meant to be there kind of in support of that pursuit of performance.
That's great, man. And so what motivated you to actually decide to make content? Because there's two types of runners these days, it feels like. There's the runners who just run, and then there's the runners who run and also like create content about it. And I think that's really great that you're doing that, and it's been fun to watch, like I said. But what actually made you motivated to create this page and start providing for a community the content?
So once I signed up for Berlin for this year and I was locked in for all 6, I kind of realized like, hey, usually I'm guessing like probably like 20, 25 people are going to be doing the all 6 this year across the world. Mm-hmm. It's kind of cool. So I was like, you know what? I kind of want to remember this journey. So I'm going to chronicle it. And so I just started by like doing my training runs, like, hey, I'm going to go, run 10 miles or whatever I was doing. And I just wanted to chronicle the journey. I wanted it as a memory book more than anything for this year, because it's going to be, I just knew it was going to be a special year. Just first finishing London and completing the 6 for one lap and then doing all 6 in 1 year. So that's why I started it. And then I found like a completely new purpose since Tokyo in like hearing and learning other people's stories. It's just like completely changed my life, if I'm honest with you. I'm so much more inspired than I've ever been, to just be out there and in the running community. And even if I'm not running right now and taking 4 weeks off, which would usually drive me nuts, I'm completely content because I'm so fulfilled by the community that I'm engaged with that like I almost forget about it. Like I don't need the running for fulfillment at the moment.
Yeah.
And that's motivated me to create some different types of content, which has been really fun and fulfilling and hard and scary and vulnerable and like, what am I doing with my life? But I was talking with a couple of my friends. I went up and watched a bunch of my buddies run a 50 miler a couple weeks ago, and a lot of them make content as well. And I think the net of it was you have to get over the summit of Cringe Mountain to get to where you want to go. So I found it's been worth putting in the effort even when it feels uncomfortable, and it's been really fulfilling.
That's great. And so for anyone who hasn't seen your page quite yet, what type of content? I know obviously you mentioned like the journey and all these different races, but what type of content could they expect to see from someone like you?
Yeah, you're gonna get a couple things. One, I just found the whole World Marathon Majors to be like a really interesting thing. Mm-hmm. It's something that brought a lot of purpose to my life for a couple of years, just being able to go on that journey that Abbott World Marathon Majors offers. So like I'm doing a little bit on that, just talking about like what are the races, how do you get into them? They're so hard to get into. So like I'm talking a lot about those races just because that is like kind of the centerpiece of my year. Yeah. I'll be covering training in general, marathon training, like how to think about cycles, how to think about different types of workouts, nutrition as well. And then the one thing I'm trying to do a lot more of, because this is what's like really inspired me, is telling and sharing stories. So whether it's like people that have reached out to me and I find a way to connect with them and get that message out there, or literally random people I meet in Central Park, I just want to get people's stories out there because like I've just met so many ordinary people that are just doing extraordinary things and have extraordinary stories, and I think they should be shared, and I find it really fulfilling to help them share them.
That's great, man. And I know you also mentioned like part of this whole journey too, like the World Major Marathons you've met, or not that you've met, but you know there's like probably 20-25 people who are actually doing all 6 in this year. Have you met any of these individuals yet? Like, is there like a little community of those folks who are doing it too? I'd be really curious.
Yeah, I'm trying to track them all down. So I mean, I've been in contact with Abbott World Majors. I always go to their booth. I'm always chatting them up. I found a couple people on social who have it. So I spun up. We've got a group chat going of 7 of us right now. So we're still trying to track down. I know we're gonna find more, but there's 7 of us, and each one of them's inspiring. We've actually got 2 here in the New York City area. Wow. One, Ron, who lives over in Hoboken's actually already done, it's called an Abbott Slam, when you do all 6 in one year. He's already done one, so he's going to be
run it back.
One of the first to do it multiple times.
Damn.
Just an absolute legend. And some just really awesome people. I met Tom Ellers, who's the first deaf-born runner to complete all 6 World Marathon Majors, and he's doing all 6 this year. We linked up in London. Just absolutely inspiring. Like, dude, imagine going out for a run at 5 a.m. and you can't hear a single thing.
I couldn't imagine that.
I can't imagine it. Wow. And like, he's like, one thing that he taught me when we met in London is like, and he made me realize as well, like, he's like, do you know a lot of deaf people? And I was like, no. He's like, yeah, a lot of the deaf community feels handicapped and like really limit themselves from really getting out there and doing things like I'm doing. And so he's like inspiring an entire community, like, hey, you can do these things. You can go travel. You can literally run through the streets. Like, you can do incredible things. He's a teacher at a school. They're actually doing a documentary on him, which I can't wait to put out there.
That's so cool. You have to keep us posted on that.
Oh yeah, I'll for sure be like blowing that up big time when it comes out. I'm
Please,
like super proud of him. He's just such a nice, awesome guy, and also like taught me a lot. And so like I put captions on all my videos now because like otherwise he can't follow along. And like that's just like a pro tip. Like, how do you be inclusive to other communities that are out there? And so that's one that I've learned from him, and he's doing all 6 World Marathon Majors this year. So yeah, it's a cool community, man, and I can't wait to see who else is out there.
That's so cool. I'd be curious, I want to do like a little bit of a fun question here. You've obviously done a lot of marathons. You've done a lot of races in general in your life and competition. What would you say is your least favorite race ever, your favorite race ever, and the most intriguing story from a run that you ever had, like a specific run? I know this might be a little bit of a, you might need a second to think about it. So
no, I've got the first two. I've got the first two straight away. So, but I'm not going to limit it to one. The worst race I ever did. So in 2015, this is my first year running marathons. This is when I was living in London. I thought it would be a good idea to run 3 marathons in 3 countries in 3 weeks.
Wow.
Okay. So I ran the New York City Marathon.
You're crazy.
I ran the New York City Marathon with my sister. I hopped on the red eye that night back to London.
Wow.
That Thursday, or that Friday, I flew to Athens. I ran the Athens Marathon.
Okay.
And then the following week, I flew to Sicily to run the Palermo Marathon in the off season in Palermo, Sicily, where there was nobody. And so the race starts off, it's like 1,000 people. It's a half marathon and marathon. We get to the halfway point. I've got 2 marathons in my legs from the prior weeks. This is when I'm still new to running.
Yeah.
And or new to marathoning. I was certainly underprepared for this. And we get to the half marathon mark, and 90% of the people stop and finish. And I'm in the middle of nowhere in Sicily. It's cold. There's nobody around. Nobody speaks English. And I'm completely shot. And I have to slog another 10 miles. And it was just like the darkest, like, what am I doing moment. There was nobody to talk to. There was nothing to do.
God.
I was just like, I just want to be done. So that was definitely I mean, it's a great experience. It's a funny story, but there were some dark moments.
Better look back at now than when you were dealing with it, I'm sure.
Yeah. And then
awesome.
I'm gonna split my best race ever into 2. The first one was the Ironman that I did in 2013. The event that Ironman puts on, like, you feel like a professional athlete. The vibes were impeccable, and I've long held that was like one of the best days of my life. Just to do such an accomplishment like an Ironman, where you have to be so dedicated to that training for a long period of time. You're surrounded by people who have similarly been, really engaging in their training programs. So there's so much that's like cultivated in that community. Really, really special day just to do it. And then the Boston Marathon this year was just absolutely incredible. Like, I was just unhinged. I threw so much energy at the city of Boston, and they threw it all back to me. And
that's great.
I could put together a video that says anything but a marathon, and it would be chock full of stuff, because I basically did every side quest possible during the race. It was wild. It was fun.
That's terrific, man. I'm curious, after this year, you've finished these 6 world majors, you knock them out. What's next? Is there something next? You gonna take a break? You have a new challenge? You gonna get back into Ironmans? I'm curious.
I have absolutely no idea.
That's okay.
So I've run a marathon now every year since 2015. I've absolutely no idea what next year brings, and I'm completely fine with that.
I don't blame you.
I've got a Boston qualifier. I think it should get me in again for next year.
Okay.
But honestly, I'm just so dialed into this year and like all the experiences that I've been getting so far this year, and then I can't wait for the fall. Like, it's going to be so special. Like, I think about it all the time, and it just brings me joy. So I'm just like fully leaning into everything now to November 6th, and I'm not too worried about what's going to come after. It's going to be fun and fulfilling, so we'll see.
That's great. Yeah, I don't think you always need to know what's next. You obviously have a lot to come, a lot of work that needs to be done for the rest of this year, but I'm really excited to see your growth through the years, man, and you're an exciting guy. I'm sure you'll have a lot of really big challenges in the future, so that'll be fun to see. But before we tell people where to find you again, because we want to make sure everyone follows you and interacts with your content, any like final tips or advice for runners, beginners, or just like anything that from your years of experience you think people should know about running that could contribute towards their success?
I'd say
it could also just be for life too. It doesn't necessarily have to be running.
Yeah, the energy you put out there is going to come back to you. I, for so many years, trained alone. When I trained for my Ironman, I trained completely alone. I trained for most of my marathons alone. And I was very motivated and fulfilled by just the process and accomplishment. And that's great. And I encourage people who are doing that to keep focused on that. But what I've realized is when you surround yourself with community, you get all that I just mentioned and so much more. And for like case in point, last year I trained with a bunch of friends. We all went out to Berlin. There was like 20 of us that went out to Berlin. And while I was out there to achieve my own personal goal, I wanted to get a BQ. When we got there, I was as much, if not more, invested in their success than my own. Like, it just, when I reflected, I was like, wow, like training with people that are going to push me and make me more likely to hit my goals, both in training and just general accountability, and then just seeing them on their journey, you are not going to be able to help but be more motivated, more inspired, and care more about the people around you than even of yourself. And you're going to hit your own goals, but immersing yourself in a community is gonna go a long way. And I wish I did it sooner.
Well, I'm glad you're doing it now. You know, it's never too late to do anything, and you're crushing it, man. I'm happy for you. I'm excited for you, and yeah, that's some really good advice. We'll remind people where to find you, and feel free to add any extra context to it for anyone who might want to check out your page.
Yeah, just look me up, Rob Dalto. You'll find my stuff, TikTok and Instagram, and yeah, it might come up as Pursuit or Performance.
Cool. Well, thank you again, everyone, for tuning into another episode of the Run Breiter podcast. This was really an amazing episode, Rob. I can't thank you enough for joining, and we will see everyone back again in the next one. Take care.